3 numbers. That is all you need to understand why federal investigators have been locked in a room staring at evidence for weeks. Why the FBI has said almost nothing publicly. Why 2 names keep surfacing inside one of the most forensically dense disappearance investigations in recent American history. But before we get into any of that, welcome. If this is your first time here, this channel exists for one reason: to go where the headlines stop, to sit inside the evidence, the forensic data, the documented timelines, and pull out what the surface-level coverage leaves behind. No speculation dressed as fact. No emotional padding. Just the case, the evidence, and the questions that the official record has not yet answered. If that is the kind of content you have been looking for, you are in the right place. Hit subscribe right now and turn on every notification. This community runs parallel to these investigations in real time, and you do not want to be the last one to know when something breaks. Now, drop a comment. Tell us where you are watching from, your city, your country, what time it is where you are sitting. We read every single one. Now, back to those 3 numbers. 2:28, 2.5 miles, 6 minutes. Do not let them go. At 2:28 in the morning on February 1st, 2026, a cardiac monitoring application on Nancy Guthrie's iPhone registered a disconnection. Her pacemaker lost its Bluetooth link to her phone. That disconnection is not a theory. It is a documented, time-stamped medical data point confirmed by the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI. The timestamp does not lie. There are exactly 3 scenarios under which that application loses its connection. The phone moves beyond Bluetooth range from the device. The application is manually disabled. Or the person wearing the pacemaker is physically relocated beyond her home network's signal threshold. Every single one of those scenarios leads to the same operational conclusion. At 2:28 in the morning, Nancy Guthrie was being moved. She was 84 years old, 5 decades in the same Catalina Foothills home in Tucson. Daily cardiac medication, a monitoring device she depended on for her continued safety. And at 2:28, that device recorded the exact moment her world and her home separated. No alarm, no call, just a timestamp sitting in a server waiting for someone to find it. Now the second number, 2.5 miles. On Camino Royale, a residential back road running through Tucson's northern corridor, a neighbor's Ring camera captured a vehicle moving at 2:36 in the morning, a time when almost no one on that road has any reason to be moving. The Pima County Sheriff confirmed publicly that the timing of that vehicle's appearance aligns with the investigative timeline. The FBI confirmed the same. Then both agencies went completely silent about what that footage shows, what that vehicle is, and where it was heading. NBC correspondent Liz Kitts drove the route between Nancy Guthrie's residence and the location on Camino Royale where that camera captured the vehicle. She chose the path a deliberate driver would choose at 2:30 in the morning, the back road, the corridor that avoids major intersections, the path someone takes when the objective is to move quickly and not attract attention. That drive took exactly 6 minutes. 2:28. Pacemaker disconnects. Add 6 minutes. You arrive at 2:34. The vehicle appeared on camera at 2:36. 2 minutes of margin. Ask yourself this. If you had just moved someone from a locked residence in complete darkness, what would you do before pulling onto a back road? You check your mirrors. You remove anything obscuring your face. You confirm the road ahead is clear. You take a breath. 2 minutes is not a gap in the evidence. 2 minutes is the behavioral signature of someone transitioning from the operational phase of a plan to the exit phase. It is not a discrepancy. It is evidence. Sheriff Chris Nanos stated publicly that the vehicle's appearance is consistent with the investigative timeline. That is not a leak, not an anonymous source. That is the lead agency on this case, placing a vehicle at that location within the window defined by medical data from a cardiac monitoring device. A retired NYPD detective who reviewed the Ring camera footage publicly assessed the vehicle as a Kia Soul, a compact crossover, common, quiet. The kind of vehicle that moves through a residential neighborhood at 2:30 in the morning and registers as nothing. A sleepless neighbor sees it and looks away. That is not an accident. That is a selection. Someone chose that vehicle because it would not be remembered. And the choices a person makes reveal exactly who that person is. The FBI has 10,000 hours of footage from the corridor surrounding Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood, Ring cameras, license plate reader data, surveillance systems that together map every vehicle that moved through that geography between midnight and dawn on February 1st. They know what that footage shows. They have not said. And that silence means one of two things. They do not want the driver to know they have identified the vehicle, or they do not want the driver to know they have already traced the route back to a destination. Either way, the silence is not confusion. It is architecture. Two names sit at the center of that architecture. Two men whose documented histories, geographic positions, and behavioral records place them inside the frame of this investigation, not through accusation, through the accumulated, publicly verified, officially confirmed weight of documented fact. Tommaso Cioni, Dominic Evans. One man dropped Nancy Guthrie at her front door hours before she was moved from her home and has not spoken a single public word since. One man whose physical profile falls precisely within the measurements the FBI established through forensic reconstruction at her front entrance. But here is what almost every outlet covering this case has failed to connect. The vehicle alone is not what makes this evidence difficult to challenge. Investigators call it a behavioral artifact, a pattern of choices, routes, and documented movements that taken individually means nothing, but assembled across multiple observations builds a portrait that is extraordinarily difficult to dismantle. And that behavioral record goes back much further than February 1st. How far back it goes and what it reveals is exactly where this investigation gets specific. Every investigation has a seam, a point where the known world ends and the unknown begins. In the Nancy Guthrie case, that seam is documented to the minute. It begins 4 hours before 2:28. October 31st, 2025, Halloween night. Nancy Guthrie attended a social gathering in Tucson. She left in the company of Tommaso Cioni, a man within her trusted social circle. He drove her home, walked her to her front door, and at approximately 10:30 in the evening, he left. That moment is the last confirmed visual record of Nancy Guthrie inside her home. Between 10:30 and 2:28, a window of nearly 4 hours opened. No alarm triggered. No emergency call placed. No neighbor reported unusual activity. The home appeared quiet. But quiet is not the same as undisturbed. Forensic material consistent with biological trace evidence was identified near the front entrance of the residence. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed its presence. Its exact nature and volume have not been publicly disclosed, but in forensic terms, confirmed presence at a point of entry is not a footnote, it is a focal point. Nancy Guthrie's iPhone remained active during those 4 hours. Application data, network pings, and device logs were all recovered. The phone was not switched off. It continued operating until 2:28, when the pacemaker application lost its signal and the phone's activity shifted in a way investigators described as inconsistent with normal sleep behavior. Translate that plainly. The phone was not behaving the way a phone behaves when its owner goes to bed. Tommaso Cioni was cleared of direct involvement following initial questioning, per Sheriff Chris Nanos. That is the official record. But cleared of direct involvement is a very specific phrase. It does not mean cleared of all knowledge. And in a case where the last confirmed visual record places Cioni at the same front door where forensic material was later recovered, that precision matters. What happened in those 4 hours is the question this entire investigation is built around. 19 years is a long time to know someone, long enough to know their habits, their schedule, their home, long enough to know when they will be alone. The documented connection between Tommaso Cioni and Dominic Evans stretches back nearly 2 decades. Not a casual acquaintance, not a recent introduction. A sustained documented relationship confirmed through public records, social connections, and investigative reporting. 2 men, 1 shared history, and 1 shared proximity to the night of February 1st. Dominic Evans is not a name the Pima County Sheriff's Department has placed on an official suspect list. That needs to be stated clearly. He has not been charged. He has not been formally named. But his name has surfaced repeatedly inside investigative reporting, inside community-level documentation, and inside the behavioral profile that federal investigators have been quietly assembling. Here is what the public record shows. Evans carries a documented criminal history. Prior interactions with law enforcement are on file. The nature of those interactions places him within a behavioral category that investigators routinely cross-reference when building proximity profiles in cases involving vulnerable individuals. That is not editorializing. That is standard investigative methodology. His physical profile falls within the measurements established through forensic reconstruction at Nancy Guthrie's front entrance. That reconstruction identified the height and build of an individual present at that threshold. Evans fits within that window. And his documented geographic position on the night of February 1st has not been publicly accounted for. 3 data points: physical profile, geographic position, documented history. None of them individually constitute evidence of direct involvement. But assembled together, inside an investigation where the FBI has 10,000 hours of surveillance footage and has said almost nothing, they form the outline of a question that has not yet been answered. 19 years of connection to Cioni, 1 night that changed everything, and a behavioral record that federal investigators have not finished reading. The next chapter of this evidence does not begin at a front door. It begins on a screen. In modern investigations, the physical scene is only half the story. The other half lives on a screen. When investigators entered Nancy Guthrie's residence, they were not just looking at walls and floors. They were looking at networks, device logs, application timestamps, the invisible architecture of a life lived with technology running quietly in the background. Nancy Guthrie's iPhone told investigators 3 things immediately. The device was active through the night. Its network connections remained stable until a specific point, and its final logged activity before the pacemaker disconnection at 2:28 did not match the pattern of a person preparing for sleep. That last point is the one investigators keep returning to. A phone in sleep mode behaves predictably. Screen dark, applications backgrounded, network pings slowing to a passive rhythm. What investigators found instead was a device registering activity inconsistent with rest, applications opening, data moving, a digital profile of someone or something interacting with that phone in the final window before the signal dropped. The FBI's digital forensics unit pulled every recoverable data point from that device, deleted files, cached application data, location pings triangulated against cell tower records. Every digital footprint a phone leaves behind, even when its owner believes it has gone quiet. What that forensic pull revealed has not been fully disclosed, but investigators confirmed the phone's data was central to establishing the precise timeline of events between 10:30 and 2:28. Central. Not supplementary, not corroborating, central. Layer that against a ring camera network surrounding the neighborhood. 10,000 hours of footage, license plate reader data mapping every vehicle through that corridor, and a 6-minute drive that places a specific vehicle at a specific location within a 2-minute margin of the pacemaker disconnection. The digital record does not forget. It does not sleep. And in this case, it has been logging evidence since the moment everything began. What it captured next is where this investigation stops looking like a disappearance and starts looking like something that was planned. Every case has a pivot point, a single piece of evidence that reframes everything that came before it. In this investigation, that pivot point has 4 wheels. The vehicle captured on the Camino Royale ring camera at 2:36 in the morning is not background detail. It is the connective tissue between the pacemaker disconnection and the physical world outside Nancy Guthrie's front door. It is the bridge between a timestamp and a direction. And investigators have been working that bridge since the first morning of this investigation. A retired NYPD detective who reviewed the footage publicly assessed the vehicle as a Kia Soul, compact, common, unremarkable at 2:30 in the morning on a residential back road. The kind of vehicle selected not for capacity but for invisibility. You do not choose a vehicle like that by accident. You choose it because it disappears into the visual noise of ordinary life. The FBI cross-referenced that vehicle assessment against license plate reader data pulled from the corridor surrounding Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. License plate readers do not blink. They do not look away. They log every plate, every timestamp, every direction of travel through their field of view, and the corridor between Nancy Guthrie's residence and the Camino Royale camera position has multiple reader installations along its length. That cross-reference has not been publicly resolved, but it has not been publicly dismissed. Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed the vehicle's appearance is consistent with the investigative timeline. That statement is precise and deliberate. Consistent with the investigative timeline means investigators already had a timeline before they found the vehicle. It means the vehicle did not create a timeline. It confirmed it. Now consider the driver. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit builds profiles not just from what a person does, but from how they move, the route chosen, the speed maintained, the specific back road selected over a faster, more direct path. Every one of those choices is a data point, and every data point narrows the field. The route from Nancy Guthrie's residence to the Camino Royale camera position is not the fastest route out of that neighborhood. It is the quietest, the one with the fewest intersections, the fewest traffic signals, the fewest opportunities for a camera to capture a face behind a windshield. Someone who chose that route knew the neighborhood. knew the camera positions, knew the geometry of moving through that corridor without being seen, or thought they knew. Because the Ring camera on Camino Royale was not the only camera active that night, and the vehicle it captured was not the only vehicle investigators have been tracking. When a scene goes quiet, forensic investigators make it speak again. The entry point of Nancy Guthrie's residence became the most examined square footage in this entire investigation. Not the interior, not the surrounding street, the threshold. The exact point where the outside world and the inside world meet, because that threshold is where the physical record concentrated itself. Forensic teams work a scene in layers. The first pass is visual, trained eyes moving across every surface, cataloging what belongs and what does not. The second pass is chemical. Reagents applied to surfaces that reveal what the naked eye cannot detect. Biological trace material that has been wiped, diluted, or dried beyond visible recognition responds to those reagents. It does not stay hidden. At Nancy Guthrie's front entrance, that second pass produced results. Biological trace material was confirmed at the threshold. Its precise distribution pattern, the specific geometry of where it was found and where it was not, told investigators something critical about the sequence of events at that door. Distribution patterns are not random. They follow the physics of how biological material moves through space, and the pattern at that threshold was consistent with a specific type of physical event at that location. The nature of that event has not been publicly disclosed, but the forensic reconstruction that followed it has been partially confirmed through official statements and investigative reporting. Investigators used the physical evidence at the threshold to establish a dimensional profile, height indicators, pressure point analysis. The specific geometry of contact between a person and a doorframe under physical stress. That reconstruction produced a measurable profile, a height range, a build category, a set of physical characteristics that investigators have been cross-referencing against individuals connected to this case. That profile has not been publicly matched, but it has not been publicly ruled out either. Picture the forensic team running that reconstruction. Laser measurement tools mapping the doorframe millimeter by millimeter. Digital overlays comparing the physical data against known profiles. A computer screen glowing in a darkened lab. Two images sitting side by side. An investigator leaning forward and saying nothing. That silence in the lab mirrors the silence from the agencies. And both silences are telling the same story. The forensic record at that threshold is not finished speaking. And what it says next connects directly to a name that this investigation has been circling for weeks. Every major investigation has a name that surfaces quietly, not in press conferences, not in official statements. In the gaps between what agencies confirm and what the documented record shows. Dominic Evans is that name, not a suspect by official designation, not charged, not formally named by the Pima County Sheriff's Department or the FBI, but present consistently, documentably, unavoidably present inside the forensic and behavioral architecture of this case. Here is what the public record establishes. Evans and Cioni share a documented 19-year connection. That connection is not disputed. It is confirmed through public records and investigative reporting. Two men, nearly 2 decades of shared history, and both of them connected through documented proximity, behavioral record, and physical profile to the same case, the same corridor, the same 6-minute window. Evans carries a documented history of prior interactions with law enforcement. Those interactions are on the public record. Their nature places him within a behavioral category that investigators cross-reference when building profiles in cases involving vulnerable individuals. That is methodology, not accusation. His physical profile falls within the dimensional range established through forensic reconstruction at Nancy Guthrie's front entrance. That is not a claim. That is a documented alignment between a forensic measurement and a physical characteristic, and his geographic position on the night of February 1st has not been publicly accounted for. Now, here is the knowledge gap that almost no outlet covering this case has addressed directly. The FBI's behavioral analysis does not work in isolation. It works in correlation. It takes a physical profile, a geographic position, a documented behavioral history, and a confirmed connection to another individual already placed at the scene, and it builds a probability architecture. Not a conviction, a direction. The direction this investigation has been moving points toward a coordinated sequence of events, not a spontaneous act, a planned one. And planned events leave planned evidence. Evidence that was placed, moved, or removed deliberately. Evidence that investigators have been reconstructing piece by piece since February 1st. Evans has not spoken publicly about this case. Neither has Cioni. That silence, across 19 years of shared history and one night that changed everything, is the loudest data point in this entire investigation. But the evidence does not need them to speak. It has already started speaking for itself. Silence is not neutral. In a criminal investigation, silence is data. When a person connected to an active federal investigation chooses not to speak publicly, investigators do not interpret that silence as innocence. They interpret it as a boundary, a deliberate line drawn between what is known and what is said. And the location of that line tells investigators almost as much as the words that were never spoken. Both Tommaso Cioni and Dominic Evans have maintained complete public silence since February 1st. No statements, no interviews, no social media activity addressing the case. In an era where everyone connected to a high-profile investigation eventually speaks to a reporter, to a camera, to a comment section that sustained coordinated silence across two individuals with a 19-year shared history is statistically remarkable. Investigators call it a signal, not evidence of guilt. A signal, something that shapes the direction of inquiry without closing it. Now layer that silence against what the agencies have been doing publicly. The FBI has released almost nothing. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has confirmed specific data points, the pacemaker timestamp, the vehicle alignment, the forensic material at the threshold, and then retreated into operational silence. Press briefings have been sparse. Official statements have been precise, narrow, and carefully worded. That pattern of selective disclosure is not accidental. Agencies managing an active investigation release exactly what they want a subject to believe they know, and withhold exactly what they do not want a subject to prepare for. Every confirmed data point released publicly was a deliberate choice. Every silence that followed was equally deliberate. Picture an investigator sitting across a table from a case file. Photographs, timestamps, forensic reports, digital logs, a map of the corridor with the camera positions marked, and a list of names with lines drawn between them. That investigator is not confused. That investigator is building towards something, and the public silence from the agencies is the sound of that building happening behind closed doors. The FBI does not deploy 10,000 hours of surveillance review digital forensic reconstruction, behavioral analysis, and physical profile cross-referencing for a case without a direction. That level of resource deployment signals a specific investigative posture. It signals that the agencies believe they know what happened. They are assembling the evidentiary architecture to prove it. And when that architecture is complete, the silence will end. What breaks it, and what it reveals when it does, is where this case is heading next. Every investigation reaches a point where the evidence stops moving forward and starts moving inward, where the questions stop being about what happened and start being about why. This case has reached that point. 6 questions sit unresolved at the center of the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Not theories, not speculation. Documented gaps in the public record that the official investigation has not yet closed. The first. What did Nancy Guthrie's iPhone activity log show in the final 90 minutes before the pacemaker disconnection? Investigators confirmed the phone's data was central to the timeline. Central. But the specific content of that activity has never been disclosed. What was the phone doing? What applications were active? What data was moving? Those answers exist inside a forensic report that has not been made public. The second, what does the Ring camera footage on Camino Royale actually show? The vehicle has been confirmed. Its timing has been confirmed. But the footage itself, the angle, the clarity, the visibility of the driver has never been described publicly. If the footage was inconclusive, agencies would have said so. They have not. That silence has a shape. The third, where was Dominic Evans on the night of February 1st? His geographic position has not been publicly accounted for. In an investigation where the FBI has license plate reader data mapping every vehicle through that corridor, the absence of a public alibi confirmation for a person whose physical profile aligns with forensic reconstruction at the scene is not a small gap. It is a structural one. The fourth, what is the precise nature of the biological trace material recovered at the front entrance? Its presence has been confirmed. Its distribution pattern informed the forensic reconstruction. But its specific classification, what it is, what it indicates about the sequence of events at that threshold, remains undisclosed. The fifth, what is the documented nature of the 19-year connection between Cioni and Evans? Public records confirm the connection exists, but the texture of that relationship, its frequency, its financial dimensions, its operational history, has not been mapped publicly. And in a planned event, relationships are infrastructure. The sixth, why has no formal suspect been named? The FBI's resource deployment in this case is not consistent with an investigation without a direction. 10,000 hours of footage. Digital forensic reconstruction, behavioral analysis, physical profile cross-referencing. That is not exploratory investigation. That is targeted investigation. The absence of a formal naming is a legal and strategic decision, not an evidentiary one. 6 questions, 6 structural gaps in the public record, and behind each one, an answer that investigators already have and have not yet chosen to release. The final chapter of this case will not be written in a press conference. It will be written in a courtroom. And the evidence assembled since February 1st is already pointing toward the door. This is where the evidence lands. Not in a courtroom, not yet, but in the documented, confirmed, publicly verified record of an investigation that has been running since the early hours of February 1st, 2026. An investigation that has deployed federal resources, forensic reconstruction, digital analysis, and behavioral profiling at a scale that does not happen without a direction. Let us walk it back one final time. A pacemaker disconnects at 2:28 in the morning. A vehicle appears on a residential back road 6 minutes later. Biological trace material is confirmed at the front entrance of the residence. A forensic reconstruction produces a physical profile. A digital forensic pull establishes a phone activity pattern inconsistent with sleep. 10,000 hours of surveillance footage map every vehicle through the surrounding corridor. License plate reader data traces every direction of travel. And two men, connected by 19 years of documented shared history, sit at the center of every single one of those data points. That is not coincidence. That is convergence. Tommaso Cioni placed himself at Nancy Guthrie's front door at 10:30 in the evening. He has not spoken publicly since. He was cleared of direct involvement, a phrase precise enough to mean something and narrow enough to leave room for everything else. Dominic Evans has not been named, has not been charged, has not spoken. His physical profile aligns with forensic reconstruction at the threshold. His geographic position on the night of February 1st remains publicly unaccounted for. His 19-year connection to the last confirmed person at Nancy Guthrie's door has not been explained. The FBI does not deploy this level of resource without knowing where it is going. The silence from both agencies is not confusion. It is construction. They are building something. And when it is built, it will not be a theory. It will be a case. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old. She had lived in the same home for 5 decades. She had a pacemaker monitoring her heart around the clock. She trusted the people around her. And on the night of October 31st, into the early hours of February 1st, that trust became the point of entry for whatever happened next. She deserves answers. Her family deserves answers. And the documented evidence assembled by federal investigators since February first suggests that those answers are closer than the public silence implies. This channel will be here when they arrive. Every update, every confirmed development, every piece of the forensic record as it becomes public. This is what we do. We stay in the evidence until the evidence speaks. If this is your first time here, subscribe now. Turn on every notification. Share this video with someone who needs to know about this case. The more eyes on this evidence, the more pressure on the record to become public. And if you have been here from the beginning, thank you. Drop a comment below. Tell us which piece of evidence you think is the most significant. Tell us what question you want answered first. Tell us where you are watching from tonight. This case is not over. The evidence is still moving, and so are we.